Scoopsy Poo. Scoops Layton is here with us. Laytomic bomb dropped right before we recorded this. Today is Monday, December 30th. We are talking Giants, Padres, Corbin Burnes going to the Diamondbacks, Teoscar Hernandez returning to the Dodgers, Gleyber Torres going to the Tigers, and what that means for the Tigers infield and a certain previous number one overall pick. But before all of that, Matt Mervis for Vidal Brujan, the guy that broke it. Aram, your thoughts?
It was cool. That was cool. I never thought I knew I could break some minor league signings. I never thought we'd just baseball would be first on a trade.
Yeah,
That
on
was
two
That's
big
pretty cool.
leaguers.
So we were first on a trade by a couple minutes. But yeah, that was awesome. Very excited for Merv on that front. And for him to get a big opportunity now to potentially play and get, semi-regular or regular at bats with the
Yeah,
Marlins. Like easy to forget that Mervis only played 30 games in the big leagues at
I
this
know.
point, right? And people are like, "Oh, well, we can't do it in the big leagues now." We've never even seen him really be able to try. So I'm really excited for him to be able to do that. I know he's going to be excited for the opportunity. Brujan going the other way for the Cubs makes sense. Just utility guy. Fits more needed on the 40 man for them, I think, with the versatility and some of the things that they might try to do moving around. But I also think it was probably the Cubs just sending Mervis to a position where he can actually have an opportunity and not just be stashed and stuck. So, yeah, it was cool though. That again, never reported on a trade before, so that was a pretty cool feeling.
I mean, I'm just thinking about it from the Cubs lens and the Marlins lens. The Marlins lens, you pair a couple of really good friends and your guy Griffin Conine and Matt Mervis. And
Yeah,
I told you, I was like, dude, you got to get a screenshot from Griffin of that FaceTime because like Marlins fans will eat that up. I can't imagine college teammates, very good friends, meeting up in the big leagues because of a trade. I understand like a Leiter and a Kumar Rocker, they were both top five picks. So I get it. The Rangers saw that opportunity here, but Mervis, you mentioned 30 games. It felt like he was cast aside by the Cubs. He could go to 29 other teams and possibly have a shot in the big leagues, but he goes to the team that one of his best friends in baseball is on. That's so
yeah, I know.
fun.
I know their Duke group chat's got to be going crazy. And another layer to it is Adam Lasky, who is a lefty reliever, kind of swingman in the Marlins organization that should be in Double or Triple A, was also their teammate at Duke, and the Marlins took him from the Cubs in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft last year.
Yeah.
So there's some fun wrinkles in that. The funniest part about it was, I in this instance actually knew before Matt. So Matt was on a flight and I went to text to check in with Matt before reporting on it, and my
Yeah.
text didn't go through, and I'm like, oh shit, he's on a flight. So I literally like sent two more. I said, text me the second you land, text me when you find out, and he said he landed to just a trillion texts, and obviously found out everything that was happening from there, and that's when I let the report rip. But yeah, he got traded while he was in the air, which is an even crazier part of the whole thing. But again, I think he's excited about just being able to get an opportunity. I'm sure there's a lot of things he'll miss about Chicago and
Sure.
all that comes with it. But at the end of the day, you're trying to be a big leaguer. You're trying to solidify your career, and the Cubs are in a really good spot with the bats that they've got, and they're not really in a position to give a guy a longer audition. And I think the Marlins very much are. So I'm excited about that, and I think Marlins fans are going to like what he brings to the table. And it's a guy that we've talked about in the past, like why wouldn't the Marlins or some other teams just take a shot
Right.
on a bat like his and see what happens? So Marlins do have a lot of first base types and everything, but they did move one and Jake Berger, and now I think if they don't want to throw Davis and De Los Santos out there as quickly, this makes even more sense because there's nothing else that Mervis needs to show in AAA. I think Davis and De Los Santos still needs to show some things in AAA. I think he
Yeah.
needs to not chase at a 55% clip. I understand that he hit a ton of bombs and all that stuff, but when it's that egregious, I think you can say, hey, this is a guy that should start the season, working on the approach a little bit more, and then we bring him up in a situation where he is, has some momentum and is ready to succeed. I think a guy whose chase rate was continuously climbing as the season progressed. I don't love the idea of starting that guy in the big leagues this
Right.
coming season in De Los Santos. So I think it buys some time there too.
You want to see how he fares after a season that was that good in the minor leagues. I mean, he led minor league baseball in homers, so you want to see how it goes after he takes an offseason and effectively cools off from that. Because you can take a guy that's hot and throw him in the show, but just because he hit, 40 homers last year in the minor leagues does not mean that he is still that 40 homer guy in 2025. Sometimes guys just have really good years. I'm thinking about Nick Pratto in 2021, where Pratto came back in 22 for Kansas City, and he wasn't that guy that was top five in minor league baseball in homers. I'm thinking about Moises Gomez in St. Louis. Sometimes you got to see those guys do it again, especially when
Yep.
they're that young. And Davison probably falls into that camp. So the fit is much more seamless for Mervis in Miami. The question is Vidal Brujan in Chicago. And I look at that bench and I see Vidal Brujan, I see the Rule 5 pick and Gage Workman, and I see a guy that I like a lot in Luis Vasquez that can fill in at short and second. So I see a bunch of utility guys on the infield, and I have no idea who's going to make the team. Some of them are going to be good Iowa Cubs. I feel confident with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder what the plan is in terms of maybe they wanted another guy that can move around the outfield as well too. And Brujan started to play a little bit more outfield. Workman's going to be that utility infielder. And yeah, maybe it's interesting with the Cubs, man. Like some of the upper level prospects like a Mervis and a Luis Vasquez that were like, hey, I like those guys as potential, role players.
Yeah.
The Cubs just haven't seemed to love their internal options as much in those more limited roles. They seem to always, kind of lean towards the grass is always greener approach. And um, I don't totally know why, because I think there's a lot more that you kind of get from a Luis Vasquez. But I guess if they want speed on that bench, obviously you're going
Brujan's
to
the
get
guy.
a little bit more with Brujan in that respect. So I guess that's what they wanted, and switch hitter that can move all over the diamond, and
Yeah.
they did get rid of a left-handed bat. So I don't totally get it, but I guess it makes some sense.
PCA, Nico, Brujan, Kyle Tucker can swipe 30 bags. They've got some speed in Chicago now too. So
Shaw
that
can swipe 20. Yeah, it's surprising, but again, I think they wanted more outfield versatility, I guess, because outside of Canario, who's gonna be the other guy that could plug in the outfield?
probably a guy that's a prospect, right? Like I'm thinking Kevin Alcantara showed really well in AAA. Casey
Yeah,
was obviously there for an entire year, so it's probably one of the internal options that's a top 100 prospect in Major League Baseball.
yeah.
And maybe not Canario. More on that a little bit later on in the episode. But this is a good change of scenery opportunity for two guys. And Mervis, one of Aram's really good buddies, is going to Miami, and Scoops Layton won it. Laytomic bomb. Peter called it a atomic missile too. Peter, that doesn't make any sense. You
Yeah.
ever heard of an atomic missile? Come on,
No,
man.
no, I don't think I've heard of an atomic missile.
Be better, Peter. Let's talk about Corbin Burnes now. I woke up and I was shocked. I did not think that this was going to happen whatsoever. This presents a world of opportunities for Mike Hazen in Arizona. The news was Corbin Burnes, 6 years, $210 million to the Arizona Diamondbacks. That happened on Friday night late, like 1:30 a.m. You were probably up, you little night owl, you. But I was in REM
I
two
was
at
up.
that point. I got up and I immediately opened Twitter because that's what any sick person does when they wake up on a Saturday morning. And I put my thoughts out. I said, thought number one, Baltimore didn't get to 210. And then the report came out that, Burnes just had twins with his wife and they are already in Scottsdale. So it makes a lot of sense. You got the lower tax in Arizona. Thought number two, him and Gallon is up there with any tandem in Major League Baseball when you talk about the front two in a starting rotation. I think it's there with Cole and Freed, and pick two Dodgers, and like pick a couple Braves. I think too when you get to Strider and Sale this coming year. I think Burnes and Gallon are there. Thought number three is who just got phased out and who is Arizona trading for?
I mean, I think Jordan Montgomery's still just going to get dumped. I think that still really is what's going to happen here, and maybe even more so now, where even though they're going to have to eat some of the money, they're still they can allow them to clear up 5, 6, 7, 8, however much they can clear up with it. I think that's still to me the clear cut move here. And I do believe that as teams continue to address and as a result not address pitching, right? Like certain teams are going to make those moves for pitching, which means other teams are going to have less options to choose from when they want to address their staff. And it's going to come down to like, would you rather have a Shugano type that is a guaranteed at best back end of the rotation arm, or would you rather roll the dice on a Jordan Montgomery who has the upside to be a middle rotation arm. As recent as 2 years ago, he was better than that, but also looked brutal last
Yep.
year. But I think you could talk yourself into it by the lack of spring training, the late start, different environment, all of those things. So I think more teams as the offseason gets later are going to be more willing to take a chance on Montgomery, especially with how expensive this pitching has been in general.
Yeah.
I think that's the clear cut guy that's still the odd man out here.
I think there's another kind of sort of clear cut guy, and kind of sort of clear cut doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I think there is another guy that is in the conversation because now it becomes Gallen, Burnes, Merrill Kelly, Fott, Eduardo Rodriguez. I didn't mention Ryan Nelson, and Ryan Nelson showed very well last year. Dre Jameson is back, so it becomes a conversation of do you want to move Dre Jameson for a little bit or Ryan Nelson for a lot of bit? And I think the answer is Ryan Nelson for a lot of bit. And my gut reaction was Baltimore again, like you're saying. Would you take a flyer on Jordan Montgomery? My thought is you've got guys that are blocked in Baltimore's situation. Could you do a Ryan Nelson paired with one of the outfielders, Alec Thomas and Jake McCarthy? And this is how you get Heston Kjerstad to a different location. Arizona could use a Kjerstad, and Baltimore could use a Ryan Nelson, and they could probably use some outfield depth.
Do they still need a Kjerstad at this point?
I feel like they need a Kjerstad.
They got Josh Naylor. They got Josh Naylor. They
but
got Pavin
Kjerstad
Smith.
can plug in the corners.
They got Pavin. I mean, here's the thing. Zach Gallen's going to be. How many more years do they have Zach Gallen under control? One.
He's on the open market next year.
You want to potentially move off of Jamont. Dre Jameson's going to come back. You're hoping he's healthy. But all of a sudden, like, your pitching's either going to get expensive or you're not going to have as much control.
Yeah.
I think you got to hold on to the guys that are cheap and under control.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about no starts being available for a Ryan Nelson. And obviously pitchers get hurt, so Nelson would be the first. But if Ryan Nelson starts the year in Reno, that's
No, I mean, that's a travesty.
that's a
But
travesty.
the way it would shake out right now is it would
Is
be
Ryan
what?
Nelson's out of the five.
It's Burnes, Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, Fott, and then you have Dre Jameson as well.
Yeah.
So
I would put Ryan Nelson over Dre Jameson, and I think Dre Jameson can throw out of the bullpen too. But they have a starting pitching surplus right now, and my question is, do they see a deficiency on that roster offensively that they attack with their starting pitching surplus? And they could do that with a Gilbert Diaz, who has trade value.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I think they're in a really interesting spot now. You bring up a good point though. Like, they could use that pitching capital to potentially add a more impactful bat if there's something out there. But I do also think with the way that last season went and how quickly a staff that we thought was pretty deep became very thin.
Yeah.
I wonder if they are fine going into this year being 6-7 deep, especially when one guy's coming off a TJ and a Dre Jameson. And a couple of the other guys, Zach Gallen dealt with injury, Merrill Kelly dealt with injury, Erod has consistently dealt with injury.
Yeah.
I think that might be enough for them to just go into this year, feel comfortable with a 6-man-ish rotation, ease Dre Jameson into it, and see how things go.
Yeah, and Jameson would, I mean, even with the six and Ryan Nelson as the sixth starter in that conversation, Jameson would be a swingman or a long reliever in that case. And that creates a very deep pitching staff because that bullpen is good too. And Justin Martinez is one of my favorite relievers in Major League Baseball. The Burnes fit, we don't need to explain how Corbin Burnes fits into a situation for you. He's one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. K rate's going down. I don't care. He is going to figure out a way to give you 180 innings at a sub-3 ERA, and he's going to do that in Arizona this year.
I want to give Ken Kendrick a tip of the cap too.
Yeah.
Diamondbacks owner, right?
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks are in the thick of RSN issues, just like a lot of other organizations, right? And here's an owner that went into this offseason. I think like a lot of business owners, right, are a little bit nervous about the financials. And some of the talk was, hey, maybe they'll cut some payroll. And I think, he was talking about that, saying, oh, that's something that we might need to do. Then I think he potentially had, I don't know what happened, but maybe he had a nice conversation with Mike Hazen. Maybe he did his own research or whatever and figured, we got a pretty good team here. And with a couple pieces, we can make a difference. We can actually make a run here. This team was great last year, won more games than we won when we made it to the World Series.
Yeah.
Add a couple pieces, we can get right back there. And that's exactly what they do. So with RSN uncertainty, it's not like this is a major baseball market. A lot of things that need to be sorted out for them to know exactly what the financials are going to look like. They added Josh Naylor, who was essentially a salary dump, for Cleveland, and then they're able to, now push the chips forward here and go get a guy that, look, I think the only reason why they were able to maybe get into these sweepstakes, and I think what probably ended up happening was, hey, Corbin Burnes is from the area.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be the highest bidder to sign him. You just need to be in the vicinity of the highest bid. If you turn that down, then your motivation is more clear than ever, right? It's
Yeah.
if you turn down the opportunity to sign the top pitcher available on the market for less than what the top dollar would be,
Yeah.
you're not all in on winning, which I think a lot of organizations out there would pass on that opportunity.
Yeah.
So you still got to pay him 200 million, but they did and took advantage of that opportunity. And I think it kind of came out of nowhere because that's exactly what happened, where it was, okay, well, we have this opportunity. All right, you know what? Let's do it. Let's spend. And I think this is a perfect example when people want to complain and moan about what the Dodgers are doing. Nobody is saying that teams can keep up with the Dodgers fully financially.
Right.
But what we are saying is that you can still try to keep it up within the same realm. Like just saying, oh, well, only the Dodgers are producing huge revenue. Like other teams aren't making nearly enough. Like this is a team that is in the thick of as much financial uncertainty as any, and the numbers still make enough sense to go fork over $200 million for Corbin Burnes. Teams can do this. They can do it. I don't know why others aren't, and this is a perfect example of just again how these middle market teams can make this happen, and it should happen more.
I saw a note from Jim Rosati at Northside Notch, and he put out projected 2023 revenues for teams. And the Pirates made $309 million in projected revenue, according to Forbes, in 2023. The Diamondbacks made $314 million. As long as your payroll doesn't get to, the 250 range, you should be okay with making $314 million in a given year. The Pirates, their projected revenue was 309 million. Their payroll that year, 87.3 million. The Diamondbacks, 314 million. Their payroll, 177 million. You're still netting over $100 million in profit if that
Yeah.
projected revenue is on par.
Yeah.
So let's acknowledge that teams are making $300 million a year, and that's near the bottom of the barrel.
Everyone complains about, we need a salary cap, all that stuff. Like I can understand that because it can get so spread out in terms of what teams are spending. But in the leagues with a salary cap, where teams are spent, like several other leagues where teams are making similar revenue numbers, sometimes even less, nobody is way off of the salary cap.
No.
Like every team, we've talked about it, like even the lowest payrolls are still pushing right up close to the salary cap because why would you do anything else? Of course, you would want to put together the best team possible. That's like playing in a daily fantasy lineup, where like you have X amount of money to put into each player and being like, you know what, I'm going to be 5,000 under budget. I'm just going to pick worse players. Like, why would you do that? You have the ability to do more, and you're still going to profit. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that I think is a little bit lost. Again, not everybody's going to be able to throw $700 million, $800 million at Juan Soto. That's a different story. But I think just about any team can make a $200 million offer to a pitcher like this for Corbin Burnes. And, this is a perfect example of that. And I love it for the Diamondbacks. I love it for baseball. And I applaud Ken Kendrick. And I love that, we have some more competitiveness, I think, in that NL West. That division is going to be an absolute, I think, an absolute banger in this coming season as well. It's going to be a good show.
Pitching wise, too, it is a monster. And then you've got the Rockies kind of hanging out, which is why the Rockies are our favorite team. If I have this right, and I know the salary cap in the NBA is kind of a joke, like it's all about the second apron, which I don't really understand, and the hard cap, things like that. But in terms of cap space for the benchmark salary cap in the NBA, there's one team that is net positive. Like they have cap space in the NBA. Everybody else, like Utah has the second lowest payroll in the NBA, and they're $3 million above the salary cap. The Pistons are $14 million clear. They're still spending $126 million on like
Yeah.
14 guys.
The Detroit Pistons with nobody showing up to the games. Like, I don't know what their TV ratings look like. They're
You,
still spending a lot more than these MLB teams. Why?
let's do this. Total cap allocations. The Minnesota Timberwolves, 236.6 million. Detroit, 126.6 million. So that's a $110 million difference. Let's go to baseball now. And let's look at tax payrolls here. So between the top and the bottom is $110 million. The Dodger tax payroll for 2024 was the tops in baseball, 353 million. Oakland was at 83 million. That's
Yeah.
nearly $300 million.
Yeah. And I think what would highlight an even bigger problem, and to me, this is the more specific issue, is not 1 versus 30, it's 10 versus 30.
Yeah.
I think the inequity between 10 and 30 would be much larger in Major League Baseball than it would be in other sports as well when it comes to payroll.
So 10 and 30. 10 is Toronto at 233.9. Oakland is at 83. So
Okay.
$150 million difference. We go back to the NBA. Let's look at cap payroll. Total cap allocations 10 is Dallas at 188. Detroit is 30 at 126. So
Yeah.
we're talking about an $150 million difference between a $50 million difference.
There lies the problem. You can complain about the one far and away spending team, but I think the issues more lie at the bottom, especially when revenue sharing exists. So again, this is just a great example, though, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but
Yeah.
the Diamondbacks, who were in peak position to be able to cry poor, had an opportunity here to sign a player who said, "Hey, I'll give you a hometown discount," essentially, and they took advantage of it, and that's nice, and that's good for baseball, and good on you, Ken Kendrick.
And hey, Dodger haters, guess who deferred $60 million? Corbin Burnes deferred $60 million. My last Burnes question, he makes about 31.7 this year and next year. He has an opt-out. He would leave 4 for 100 on the table. And that would be, I mean, he would take home more cash, but that would be $36.7 million a year in his age 32 through 35 seasons. How likely do you see an opt-out after 2 years?
I don't know.
I see unlikely because I'm
I
looking
think
at a guy that would be in
unlikely.
his mid 30s that is making $37 million a year.
Yeah, I think unlikely, to be honest.
So there we go. Corbin Burnes, Arizona just went for it, and I think they might have nailed it. Also, $35 million a year on average for that guy. Feel like the fact that he got less total money than Max Fried is astounding to me. How does that happen? And the
Yeah.
answer is lower taxes. His wife just had twins in Scottsdale.
Yep. Yep. And the Yankees, I think, really wanted to bring Freed there. So I think
Yep.
that was a big part of it too.
Yep. Gleyber Torres is the newest member of the Detroit Tigers. It is a 1 year, $15 million deal. I saw he mentioned the Yankees did not ever offer a contract, and I find that absolutely insane. Gleyber Torres,
Really?
yeah, I do.
Why?
Do you not?
Not in the slightest.
Really? 1 year,
No.
15?
I, I don't think they wanted him there at all.
Why?
Why would
Because
you
of
want him there?
he's been one of their consistent bats over the course of the last 6 years.
He also pouted all the time, said he won't play third. He's a second baseman. And I don't know. I think that the way that relationship seemed like it was going at the end and the way he went about his business, I don't think it would have made much sense to push their tax number even higher. I mean, I know it's only 1 year, but that's still a chunk of change for a guy that had a 104 WRC plus. And again, like I think a guy that legitimately was unwilling to play another position for you when you're making a push to the playoffs and the World Series, and I just seemed like so unhappy at points there at the end. I kind of expected that to be the case, and they'd been dangling him for years, and then saying they're not, and whatever. Like it felt like that breakup was inevitable.
Yeah. So I think you're probably looking at, a lot of the stuff that happens outside the chalk, which makes total sense to me. And that's, I guarantee you why they didn't do that. But in terms of what happens between the foul lines, unless they have, greater plans, I just look at Oswaldo Cabrera or a broken DJ LeMahieu playing third base and Jazz going to second. I'm like, why wouldn't you even consider bringing Gleyber back if the market doesn't materialize the way you want it to on field? But off field, that makes a lot of sense.
I wonder if they go and just get another third baseman now. I would rather take on, I think, the Arenado contract and have some of that paid down potentially
Really, as
and have
opposed to
Jazz at
Gleyber.
second, I think, than another year of Gleyber. It's just 2 extra years. If you get some of it paid down, I don't think it's that bad. But yeah, I mean, they definitely have a spot to fill. That's for
Yeah,
sure. It just seemed like to me there is no way
that
that Gleyber was
relationship was
coming back
fractured.
there.
Yeah, I understand that. That if that relationship was fractured, I would not be considering offering this guy a contract either. But I do think that this may be a discount for a guy, 1 year, $15 million that has been a consistent bat, and the standard set for him has been high because he did that when he was a youngin, but at points it felt a little unrealistic, and it felt like he was hated by that fan base for no reason. I think he could go to Detroit, and I'm not talking an 850 OPS, but I'm talking a high 700s, maybe an 800 OPS, and he could be a big piece of that lineup at the top of the order.
I do like the ad for Detroit. It was surprising just because of the fact that he um plays a position where they kind of have a bunch of not that great defensive
Right.
infielders, and now you have another one there at second base. But from the lens of they're so left-handed heavy,
Yeah.
and Glaber's a guy that hits left-handed pitching quite well. Definitely helps balance things out. Also, walks a lot. I like the approach and all of that. It just was surprising. Colt Keith came along so far defensively. They paid him, this
Yeah.
pre-arb contract essentially, and now they're going to shift him over to first. Writings on the wall for Torque, as you alluded to off the top, but it just they're really, I guess the way they look at it is if you're moving Keith over to first, Gleyber maybe be a little bit more bought in defensively this year, but even if not, like he's not going to be worse.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just weird from a defensive standpoint. Scott Harris just seems to not be as worried about the infield defense to a degree.
Yeah. So the question there, like, was the ripple effect from the Gleyber Torres signing, and we've talked about it. They do not need another second baseman, especially with arguably their best position player prospect in Kevin McGonigal looking like he's going to be a second baseman when he gets to the big leagues and not necessarily a shortstop. Although time will tell. Um, Keith moving to first base is interesting to me, not just because it's smell you later torque. It's very Cronenworth, where this guy
Yeah.
got big money. He can turn into a very good defensive first baseman because he was becoming fine at second base. But what does a very good defensive first baseman do for you when compared to the rest of the league's first base options? You're probably league average offensively. He
Yeah.
was going to be a very good offensive second baseman. And now we're talking about a guy that I think is going to be a league average offensive first baseman.
I think they're betting on the bat really continuing to improve. And,
Yeah.
I think he can be a 20-25 home run guy. He historically has walked a ton, didn't walk too much in his, rookie year, which very common, right? Guys are going to get a little bit overwhelmed by the stuff, not be as selective, chase a little bit more. If Keith can see that walk rate creep back up to what we saw throughout his minor league career, tap into a little bit more power, I think he can be an above average first baseman. But it does maybe, present the idea. I don't think it'll ever be a bad deal, but it might be one of those where it's like, oh, you know, maybe that wasn't the guy that we should have paid right out of the gate. I don't think that that'll be the case though, because again, I think very easily he's 110, 115 WRC plus, play a good first base, and that's going to be a valuable player. But it is interesting. The guy that you were high enough on to give this deal to, you're already kind of planning to slide over to first base, but they might just feel like for this season alone, this helps them put their best foot forward. And, Keith can always slide back over to second base if they want, and they can kind of move things around a bit. Then the one thing with Gleyber though, is, definitely a guy that, can spray it all out to all parts of the field and took advantage of that fortune right at times. You
Yeah.
know how many home runs he would have had last year in Comerica?
10.
9.
Okay.
Um, but the year before that, 26. So the spray fit better then.
Yeah.
The year before that, 17. So it'll be interesting to see how he settles in there. But again, the spray made sense in 2023. 26 home runs would have been almost as much as he would have hit in a lot of other ballparks as well,
Yeah.
more than what then he actually ended up hitting. So I think they're betting on the spray playing, especially because the pull side power is there, and it's not as ridiculous there. It's more to center field and the right center gap where it's pretty gnarly. So if he leans into the pull side a little bit more, I think it'll work. But it makes them better offensively, and that's what they needed. And it's just kind of a fascinating shuffle.
Was I the only one that saw the Tigers fan base on Twitter whipping themselves into a frenzy about Alex Bregman now, saying, "Oh, we got our second baseman. Time to go get a third baseman." Did you see that too?
No,
There's a
no.
lot of Alex Bregman fits in Detroit chatter right now, and I love it. Like it would be awesome if Detroit, put their money where their mouth was and did that. But it's tough, especially when you have, a top 100 prospect in Jace Young, who debuted last year, and you've got this surplus of second baseman that could plug in at third base. It would that would be plan A. They go get Bregman and you kick Jace Young to the curb. But is Detroit actually going to do that? I don't think so.
I couldn't think of a worse environment for him to hit in either.
Yeah,
A
no
guy who loved the
chance.
Crawford boxes, throwing him out there in Comerica, like, oh, I don't know about that for either party. And it'd be another super long term deal on the left side of the infield. Obviously, I think it would go a lot better than the Javi Baez situation, but
Yeah.
just another huge commitment on the left side. It would feel a little forced.
Yeah, that was Alavila though. That wasn't Scott Harris. So credit Scott Harris.
Of course.
No doubt. Last transaction we got to talk about before we get to the Padres and the Giants. Teoscar Hernandez is back in Dodger blue. It's a 3-year, $66 million re-signing with the LA Dodgers. Deferred money, whatever. Club option for $15 million in his age 35 season in 2028. He got his multi-year deal. It's a little cheaper than I was expecting it to be for a guy that was that good last year. I know he had that down year in Seattle, but he was awesome in Toronto. He was awesome last year. I know he's already 32 years old, but $22 million a year for the next three and then a club at 15. This is a perfect fit for LA.
Yeah, and I was surprised every time I kept seeing like, oh, they're apart on
How
contract
are they
negotiation.
apart? Yeah.
How are they? Yeah, I just didn't understand that part because what is there to be a part about? You've got the money. He fit perfectly. He can make it all work. He clearly wants to be there, and I felt like him entertaining other opportunities just it seemed almost like just leverage at that point. Why would you go anywhere else if you're Teoscar? Like you got yourself right back to the form that you were in. If anything, it was better than we've really ever seen him. So I think the only other year that you could really point to would probably be what that 2021 year. But I think you can make the argument that across the board and underlying data wise, this past year was as good as he's ever been. Won the World Series, run it back, and from a contract standpoint, I don't know what Santander is going to get, but if it is more than this,
Yeah.
I'd rather have Teoscar for this.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so I think from that perspective, like it's a great deal for the Dodgers, and I mean just really solidifies the roster for them, and I don't think they really need to do much else, huh?
That was my first thought as well. They're flawless now. My second thought was this should lower Santander's price because there's no way Santander gets 90 if Teoscar is getting 66. Santander could get 70 or 75, but he shouldn't be getting the 90 to 95 to 100 that was floated in, October, November
Yeah,
when we were
I
talking about
don't.
his free agency.
I would way rather have Teoscar at
Yeah.
that number than
Yeah.
than really. I mean, what about at the same number? Who would you rather have?
I'd probably rather have Teoscar just because he does enough besides hitting homers. Like
Yeah,
Santander, his value came from 40 homers this
yep,
past year.
yep.
It was not a good OPS because he doesn't walk. Like aside from hitting homers, it's not like he's going to be a 50 double guy. I just don't really see it, and I think Teoscar is a better defender at this point too. I don't have the metrics in front of me, but like watching both of them play the outfield. I feel much more comfortable with Teoscar in the corner than I do Santander.
Yeah, it's kind of a mid off, but
Yeah,
I don't totally disagree. And you look at the way it might age. Like I don't see Santander getting much better either. We'll
no,
see how Teoscar being a little bit older looks at 33, 34. But the thing is you're probably gonna have to give more years to a Santander. I'd rather go shorter term to Teoscar
yeah.
and roll that way. So I mean they're set up pretty nicely now in LA. They don't really need to do anything else.
No, my only other thought is which young guys are getting shafted here. And I think it's Pages. I think it's James Outman as well. I think the opportunity for Outman to bounce back is borderline non-existent, especially if they are doing the Mookie at short thing, and now they have the corners filled out. So Outman is possibly falling into a Matt Mervis situation
Yeah.
where he was so good for 1 year and now he can't buy another AB in the big leagues. And all of a sudden, it feels like Pages and Dalton Rushing are blocked from ABs.
Yeah,
It's
I would say
not terrible. Yeah.
Rushing hurt. It for sure hurts rushing too. I think now you're because it seemed like his outfield reps were how they were going to get him more ABs,
In
and then
25.
now you sign Conforto. You still have Austin Barnes as the backup. Rushing is probably not your ideal backup, but that might end up being the route that they go if Barnes is just really struggling. It's fascinating, and I think now with Pages actually looking fine in center field, and your everyday center fielder being such a good defender, and Tommy Edman, Pages is more of that fourth outfielder and short platoon guy. And I really think Outman is fully the odd man out.
Yeah.
So he could end up being moved in kind of a Mervis type of deal. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Where's his value at?
Well, I think it's a
Really?
couple lotto ticket prospects, if that, maybe a lotto ticket prospect, and it opens up the 40-man spot for them.
Somebody should do that.
Absolutely,
Oh my
absolutely should.
God. White Sox, come on, man.
Yeah,
Go
why
grab James
not?
Outman.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Wow. Yeah, I that if his value is that low and I was a bottom 10 payroll team or success team in Major League Baseball in 2024, I'm getting Friedman on the horn. I'm getting Brandon Gomes on the horn and I'm like, "Give me James Outman. I will give you whichever DSL guys you want."
Yeah. And then people are going to roast you in 5 years when the DSL guy you traded ends up being a star.
Yeah, it's James Shields for Fernando Tatis all over again, but James Shields was a fun get.
Yeah, exactly. We'll worry about that in a few years.
Exactly. We're going to do the Padres and the Giants in a moment. Before that, quick break. Padres or Giants first?
Mm, who are you more excited about?
I think I'm more excited about the Padres because I think it's more difficult.
Yes, it is a challenge.
Let's do the Padres first, and then we can kind of taper off with the Giants, and people can leave whenever they want to. It's like early dismissal if you want, but the Giants, they've done a lot at this point. The San Diego Padres, it's a weird one because it would be kind of nice if we shed a couple $1 million for them because they clearly have some budget constraints, but they are very good, and they should be a World Series contender. I talked about it when they signed Bogarts, but I think it's even more extreme now. This is the closest thing we've got in Major League Baseball to those early 2010s Heat teams where they have their stars and then they just try and fill the roster up with
They have
aging
nothing
stars.
else.
They have nothing else besides the superstars.
And this is a team that, like, here, their financial restrictions are legitimate at this point.
Yeah.
Like they've pushed it really far, and with Peter Seidler unfortunately gone, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts to this whole equation, and they needed a little bit more of a playoff run. They got a little bit more of one this past year, but got bounced early the year before. They're not trying to trim everything, but I think with their RSM limitations and how high the payroll's been for multiple years and the financial, I mean, a lot of these big contracts aren't lightening up anytime soon. Like like you said, Bogarts is still on the books for a long time. So is Tatis and Machado. Like there's a lot of wrinkles to this. So I think at least they're going to have to move one deal. You're going to need to dump one of these contracts. And I think to me, it's obvious who that one player should be ultimately. Like I see Dylan Cease getting floated. I think once you do that, you're putting yourself in a spot where you're hoping for some crazy circumstances to be able to get back to where you were last year because you need Cease. And that's a guy that upside wise, I mean, especially with just some of the age of the arms in the rotation, just guys being banged up. Like, what are you going to get from you, Darvish, this year? We don't really know completely. Michael
Musgrove's
King
out
was
of the equation.
awesome,
Yeah.
but Musgrove's out of the equation. Like, I mean, outside of Dylan Cease and Michael King, and then of course Darvish, you're hoping to just continue to be great at 38.
Yeah.
Like, it drops off pretty quickly. Could you imagine this rotation? Sans Dylan Cease?
Yeah,
I-
it's bad.
It's unserious.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, especially where the expectations are. It's unserious. But I'll give you the 411 now. The final 2024 payroll was $170.8 million for San Diego. The estimation in 2025 is over 200, 206.7. That's from Spotrac and Fangraphs. Notable transactions to this point. Ha-Sung Kim declined his end of a mutual option, so he declined his player option. They lost Jurickson Profar, Tanner Scott, Kyle Higashioka, Elias Diaz, Martin Perez, Donovan Solano, David Peralta, and Nick Ahmed to free agency. They agree to a minor league deal with Mason McCoy. They selected Juan Nunez from Baltimore in the Rule 5 draft. And as of Saturday evening, Mike Brasso is now a San Diego Padre as well. What does that do for you? Um, you mentioned there are a couple, there's one clear cut guy. Is it a rise?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the financial situation on a rise. He is in his final year of arbitration, and he is owed an estimated $13.7 million. That's a hefty price tag for a 1.5 win player last year. And I know
Yep.
he won a batting title, but batting average and WAR do not go hand in hand. Batting average and overall value, unfortunately, do not go hand in hand. I think Luis Arraez is a confusing player, maybe the most confusing player in Major League Baseball, because I think that there is still a large facet of baseball and a large facet of front offices that view Arise as an all-star talent. And
Hmm.
then I think there's another large facet of baseball that views Arise as a one-win player. And it's kind of up to the organization to decide. I see another contract that could shed you a 5 or 6 and could get you out of some years of control as well. Yuki Matsui feels like excess in this bullpen.
Yeah, I was gonna say Matsu. Suarez is awesome, but Suarez is double that amount too. That could be
Yeah.
a guy that now with your what the price tag is on a lot of relievers, could you potentially move off of Suarez's deal?
Yeah.
But that's a tough deal to move because it's 10 mil in 25. He has an opt out in 2026, or he opts into $8 million. So you'd probably assume he's gonna opt out. You'd hope he pitches well enough, but you're kind of being held hostage at that point.
Yeah.
And then there's incentives for games finished and stuff like that. So I I wonder if that's one that they'd be willing to move off of as well. Just because of yeah, they got $10 million, a pretty big price tag going into next year.
For sure. And I think I gravitated towards Matsui over Suarez because of the length and because of the money in 26 and 27 and 28. Yuki Matsui has a no trade clause, which is a wrinkle, but I think he would waive it given the right situation. But from 25 onward, he's effectively owed 4 years, $24.75 million with a player option. Is Matsui going to be that good to decline the player option and hit the open? I don't know. I don't think so. Like, when's he going to throw? The sixth inning?
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, if you're trying to get Roki Sasaki though, I don't know. I don't know if moving Yuki might be the best way to do it.
Yeah. Do you see that? I know they should be considered the number two for Sasaki. Is he in your plans for this team right now?
I think he has to be.
Yeah.
I think he's might be the saving grace of this team,
Yeah.
especially if they move Dylan Cease. If they move Dylan Cease, he's the saving grace. But I also, this is why I think it makes so much sense for him. You would then join a team that has World Series aspirations, is has their hands kind of tied, and you can really push across the finish line. And I know that you can't really do anything to make your pitch better, but I get the sense that Roki Sasaki wants to feel needed. I don't think there's a team that needs him more than the Padres, meaning that like
Yeah.
you're going to get such a high impact arm, and you didn't have the money to be able to do so. Obviously, they're all in on winning, so it's not like
Yeah.
he's going to a team that it just hasn't been invested in winning and is looking for a free ride for an arm that is going to be signed for way below market value. Like this is a team that's been trying to take down the big bad Dodgers, is in a precarious financial situation, and you can kind of help them get out of it with multiple, yeah, I think pieces that I think people are excited about. And I mean, I know his agent, even praised the way that the Padres went about the Yu Darvish situation last year. And I know Yuki and you were at the opening of their pitch lab in at whatever college that was. I forget which one it was. But they have their Padres pitch lab out there in San Diego. I think they opened that last year.
Yeah.
But he is definitely like excess. And I do think one way or another they can trim from this bullpen because Suarez, Jason Adam, Jeremiah Estrada is disgusting.
Yeah.
Morahone had a great year. Brian Hoeing, what an addition he was for them as well. Another really solid reliever. Sean Reynolds, who we just talked to on the call up, he was dynamite in his big league debut with them. And then they also have Wandy Peralta. So like they've got dudes, and I definitely think they can trim from that bullpen. And that's not even mentioning some of the arms they have in the upper minors. I think have some intrigue.
They need warm bodies on the big league bench, and they need a warm body at the back of that rotation. I like the idea of moving Suarez, but it depends, what AJ Preller is feeling. Is Suarez, one of the better relievers in baseball in his mind? In that case, you probably hold on to him and you think about moving a Yuki. But I do like the idea of putting together the best pitch for Roki. And building on your point, there's not a team that needs him more than the Padres. There's not a team that needs him less than the LA Dodgers.
Yeah,
So he
correct.
has to feel like he'd be excess if he were to sign there. So I didn't call BS on the heavy favorite thing with the Dodgers. I said just entertain the field when it first got reported that he was going to get posted. Now I'm kind of calling BS on the heavy favorite after
Yeah.
the Snell and
Yeah.
after everything else.
100%. I think you were ahead of the curve on that one because it just seems like everything that they have done, and Rhett's Roki and his agent, it just seems like it's been made very clear that every team's going to have a pretty fair shot, and it's not like he's doing that to drive up the bidding. The bidding's
No.
all going to be the same. So I think it was made abundantly clear that every team's going to have a shot. I think when you look at Matsui, it might just be hard to move that contract in those years. At this point, I think he finished the year really well. You'd probably have to eat some of it. And I think Matsui actually in his second year here is going to settle in and could have a pretty nice season. It's a guy that they could end up moving during the season if they needed to. Of
Yeah.
course, Cronenworth is a deal that you'd love to move, but there's just no way anyone's taking that on unless it's a bad contract swap. So, yeah, I really look at it and I see Arias. I see I see one of the relievers. And then when you think about what the relievers cost and what everybody's price point is, the only reliever that's more expensive than Yuki Matsui is Robert Suarez, who is
Yeah.
awesome again, but you could move just everybody up in that bullpen and I still think feel pretty good. Like if Jason Adam is your closer, that guy had a 195 last year.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah Estrada is your setup man instead. You're relying on Yuki Matsui then taking another step forward next year, but I think he can. He's got some crazy characteristics from the left side. He still struck out 70 batters and 60 and 62 and two thirds. Like
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest contract to move.
Yeah.
And I think makes the biggest difference for them. They could trim 24 million and then they could actually reinvest a little bit of that back in,
Yeah.
and to go address another position.
So I've got two mocked. I have an Arias deal mocked, and then I had a Yuki Matsui deal mocked, but I want to pivot to a Robert Suarez deal. So I feel like there is one guy that could fill a role for them that could come back from the team that I have Matsui mocked that would also fit in a Robert Suarez trade. But I want to give you the lowdown on their lineup and like the bats that they have available because it is an insane drop off. You want to talk about the drop off from 1 to 30 in payroll? Obviously, you have Tatis, Merrill, Machado, Bogarts. I'll even throw Cronenworth in that clumping. And then you have Arias right now. But Tirso Nelas is the projected starting left fielder. Eggy Rosario is the projected DH on opening day. And then the bench is Brett Sullivan, Mike Brasso, Tyler Wade, and Brandon Lockridge. That's the
Yeah,
worst bottom half of an offense in baseball, and it's not close.
it's real bad. It's real bad.
It's White Sox level. Like that bench and that back third of the lineup is absolutely White Sox level.
Yeah, it does remind me of my old Heat teams. Who's the Zildrunas Ilgauskas of this squad?
Probably Brasso at this point, right?
Who's
Although
Ronnie
Brasso might
Turioff?
be
Tyler Wade's Ronnie Turioff, I think.
absolutely. Brett Sullivan is probably Jawan Howard.
Honestly, I got fired up when Jawan would get some minutes. He was so old.
Which is how you're going to feel when Brett Sullivan pops behind a plate on a Tuesday night.
Well, and that's the thing. I was looking at the catching situation.
Yeah.
Luis Camposano was in a spot where like they didn't really trust him much at all, and it was okay. Thank goodness that Kyle Higashioka stepped up. So now you're telling me you're just going to give. I've been high on Camposano, and I just think he needs a change of scenery. I don't think you're going to just move him now because you need a catcher that's cheap, but you're just going to give him the keys to the castle.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think you can, but you probably need a better backup plan than Brett Sullivan, right?
I think so. And I think that answer is a 1 year deal on the free agent market. I
Yes,
do. I think
correct.
a cheap one. And I think a reunion with Elias Diaz could make a ton of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like that. So I think they got to clear up a couple bucks to do that. I think, look, you knew that going into this year, you were going to have to be a little bit restricted. You were going to have to give something up at a certain spot and roll with a youngin.
Yeah.
I think Tirso Ornelas has earned that. And I know that you've been a fan of his since you were in Fort Wayne. It's just a guy
Yeah.
that could be a solid big leaguer and put together a nice career. And I think what he showed in AAA last year, 23 bombs. I understand it's a PCL, but he still put up a 113 WRC plus. He doesn't punch. He has a good approach. He hits the ball hard. I think he could be a fine outfielder for them. And like he doesn't need to be great. Like remember, they had David Peralta out there. Like he just needs to be a league average hitter or close to it, play some decent defense, and I think you're in a decent spot. So I'm okay rolling out there with Ornelas. But to your point, if you're going to do that, then you need a better bench and a little bit more depth in general just to bolster that situation. And you definitely can't have Eggy Rosario TH. I love Rosario as a bench option,
Yeah.
but we got to move him down to the bench.
Here's,
He can't be, and especially if you're going to move off of Arias.
you ready for my reliever trade? Because
Yes.
I find a short side of the platoon for Ornelas and a bench bat, a fourth outfielder that is a lot better than Brandon Lockridge.
Okay.
There is a guy, much like Mervis, that is very blocked in the Cubs situation. Alexander Canario should be on this team.
I do like that.
Canario is worthy of big league ABs. So my Yuki Matsui deal was Yuki to the Cubs, who need relievers, for Canario and Jonathan Long, who performed really well in Double A after getting the call up and was really good out in the fall league. But my Suarez deal, I think you could provide some starter depth because they need it. Robert Suarez to the Cubs for Canario and Jordan Wicks.
Ooh. They need a lefty too.
And they need somebody that can give you innings. And I know Wicks was dealing with an oblique thing, and then it was a back thing as well. But he
Yeah.
seems
I feel like
like
those
your
go hand
innings
in
eater.
hand.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a guy that has shown some decent things and I think could benefit from just getting more opportunity elsewhere. And he seems like he's kind of pushed out at this point, especially with all the left-handers that they have there.
yeah.
Uh, I like that. And Canario fits quite well. Cheap, can move around a little bit to both corners, plug in an absolute emergency if you ever needed it in center field. And I think it's a great, not only like platoon, but potential just insurance policy. If Ornelas isn't good, then okay, now you have a guy that you'll plug in there and play full time as well. So I like that. I think what is Canario's value at this point though?
I think Canario, like, take a look at the big league numbers because it's been a very small sample, but he is a net positive hitter. Like the OPS plus, I think is 115, 120.
Yeah, he definitely has held his own, and in AAA the numbers have been great. He whiffs for sure. So I think if you're putting him on, in spots where he's more likely to succeed, that probably helps. Yeah, so I like the Canario side of it, and especially with Casey coming up, like you said, and all these other bats, like they really don't need him. Is there a better option than Wicks, or does it make just the most sense to have him in there as well? Because I was thinking, is there another like infield bench bat, something like that you could go get,
So,
or would you rather have the starting pitching depth?
I feel
I'd
like
probably rather have the starting pitching depth because it's cheaper to address the other.
I think so. The pivot there, and I don't know what the value is of Suarez because he's worth a lot of money. He's very good, but he's worth a lot of money. So is Canario and Wicks an overpay for Robert Suarez? I don't think so because Wicks doesn't have innings in this rotation. The pivot that you could make, I talked about their gluttony of utility infielders. It could be Canario, Luis Vasquez, and Caleb Killian. Would they be interested in that?
I think I'd rather have Wicks, Canario, and I wonder how much more value Suarez carries because he was good, but he also has an opt out. But $10 million is pretty cheap, so it's this interesting kind of push and pull both ways. I'm just wondering if that's enough, but it's tough for me to value Wicks. I don't know what they value him at,
I
but I
have no
think
idea.
that for the sake of the exercise, it makes sense, and you can plug and play whatever arms you prefer in another way. But yeah, Wicks has in his big league career a 5 ERA in 80 and two thirds innings. But I mean, he's shown some decent flashes. And when he was healthy in 23, he had a 4.41.
Yeah.
So there's just a chance that you really have kind of like just nothing more than depth in return.
Yeah.
And that's my only concern. But you could, again, it's more for the sake of exercise. You could pivot and send Suarez elsewhere and have a similar type of trade with another ball club to address those needs. But I think for the sake of the exercise, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so we'll call it for now. We'll call it Suarez for Canario and Wicks.
Yeah, works for me.
Arise. There's one team that I look at that should feel some pressure from their fan base to add a hitter with a beating heart that won a batting title in Arise. And I think can take on $9 million. And I think that's Seattle. I think Arise could fit well there because they are begging for a table setter with Julio at the top of that lineup. And they are either going to run out a combination of Tyler Locklear and Luke Raley at first base, or they can pitch their fan base on an all-star and a guy that's won 3 straight batting titles.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an easier sell.
Yeah. I do agree with that. Um, hmm.
There is a piece that is in his final year that is worth $4 million that I think is an obvious return, and you might need to add a little bit more. I know Mariners fans love him, but Dylan Moore should start the return, and that would solve a lot of problems for San Diego.
That would solve a lot of problems. I think he'd be a great fit, to be honest. You know how much I've loved Dylan Moore, so
Yeah.
but it sends a little bit of money the other way, but you're not going to be able to address needs in any other way. I think then, um, like it's going to be more expensive than the 4 million that he's owed to try to find a player that can move all over and do what Dylan Moore does. I like that a lot.
Do you think there needs to be much more?
Yeah, just because not much more because I think when people were talking about the Marlins return for Arias and how it was a little bit light, and we said, wait till you see what he's going to get in arbitration in 25.
Yeah.
Like that's baked into this whole thing, which is why the Marlins sent over $10 million with the deal to enhance the prospect return. Now he's slated to make around $14 million this year. I think a lot of teams like Arias. I think everybody agrees that Arias is a net positive player. I don't think
Yes.
anybody's disputing, no matter where you line up on the spectrum of the archetype of that type of player. But at 14 million, a lot of teams are going to be less interested in that kind of skill set.
Yeah.
I agree with you though. I think the Mariners are in a spot where it's like it doesn't even matter how it's achieved. You need a guy that just consistently puts the ball in play. Like they struck out way too much. He's not going to do that. He's going to grind out ABs and he's going to help elevate your offense. And I don't think it really matters where he hits.
Yeah.
So I think that's a guy that you should want to add to the equation. But because he's so expensive, I don't think it'll take too much more. I think it's just probably like one okay to decent, prospect or piece.
So I go to starting pitching, and we've talked about a guy that like was very not good last year and should be getting bunny hopped by a Logan Evans and by a Michael Morales. Is Hancock the second piece?
If Hancock's the second piece in this deal, then I don't want Jordan Wicks in the other one.
Really? Okay. So I would rather have Jordan Wicks than Emerson Hancock at this point.
Really?
I think so because Wicks's changeup is better than anything Hancock is giving you.
Yeah. Yeah, but Hancock's fastball has a chance to survive.
Yeah. And Wicks's doesn't.
Hmm. I think I'd rather have Hancock.
You'd rather have Hancock. So let's call it a rise for Dylan Moore and Emerson Hancock, and then let's adjust the Cubs package for Robert Suarez.
Is that too much from the Mariners?
I don't think so.
All those years of Emerson Hancock?
Wait, I mean Hancock, like we talked about it on the Mariners top prospects episode on the call up. Hancock is being bunny hopped by Logan Evans. When they need a spot start in 2025, it's probably not going to be Hancock at this point.
No, not at all. And if he's just rotten AAA,
What's
and
the point?
teams aren't, not a lot of teams are going to value Hancock, I think, like in a trade other than the Padres who need arms there. The Mariners, Dylan Moore's, I think it allows them to actually go offset some of the salary, and you could just have Samad Taylor moved up here now
Yeah.
and be that super utility in addition to Ryan Bliss, who's also that utility type for you. So yeah, I think that works.
Okay, so Dylan Moore and Hancock for Luis Ariz. Now let's revisit who comes back to San Diego with Canario.
Who comes back to, okay. Um, I was thinking, well, now we have Dylan Moore on the infield side of things. So,
Yeah.
because I was thinking about like Benjamin Cowles or something like that.
Yeah.
Is this where you go?
Christian Franklin.
He wasn't taken in the Rule 5.
I know.
Um, what position now? So you addressed another starting pitching need.
Yeah.
You addressed somewhat, just infield depth and just upgrading, and you can figure out where exactly he plays, but just helps to have a Dylan Moore in the equation.
Yeah. And you got an outfielder.
And you got an outfielder. And you still need another bat. I don't think you're going to get that in either of these deals anyways. So,
And the Cubs don't have a catcher I'm interested in aside from Ballesteros. And
which
it's
is
not
never
like
going
the
to
Cubs are going
happen.
to part with Ballesteros for Robert Suarez.
No, no way.
Is Aliendo valuable?
I don't even know. I don't even know.
Okay.
Um, so probably not.
Yeah.
I I think a prospect then at that point, and then you either make a trade or address the final the you could go get a clogger that clearly those guys aren't very like difficult to acquire at this point. It's just a bat first clogger type of guy that could grab the DH spot. I think if you just get a prospect coming back in this one, that would probably be fine.
Yeah. All right. Pick your poison. Who you want? I'm just trying to find a prospect that like fits this price range.
If it's the price range of Jordan Wicks, that's a tough one. I would say, oh man, that's tough.
Dude, I don't know.
Like Michael Arias.
Oh God. It's such a hard watch. It is so hard.
Okay. We'll upgrade a little bit more to. Do you want like a full lotto ticket?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a reliever. I'd part with a lotto ticket for he's too expensive. Um, I mean Pablo Aliendo is probably enough.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's go Pablo Aliendo. They need catching depth in that org.
Okay. So I you showed your hand that Brandon Valenzuela doesn't do it for you. Are we doing anything else? We signed Elias Diaz. We traded Robert Suarez for Alexander Canario and Pablo Aliendo. And we traded Luis Ariz to Seattle for Dylan Moore and Emerson Hancock. You
Are we
might
undervaluing Robert Suarez? That's the question I keep asking myself
We
here.
could be, and that could turn into Jackson Wiggins.
But he's also 33. That's what I was thinking about. But he's also 33 and a year removed from a 4.23 ERA. But he was also a year removed from a 2.27, and he was kind of hurt in 2023. But I don't think they're giving up a Jackson Wiggins for him. It's probably enough. It's
Yeah.
probably enough.
Okay.
Yeah. I was gonna say Cole Mathis maybe as well, but who they just
Yeah.
drafted, corner guy.
Add one more on top of Aliendo. Sure. Cole Mathis. Why not?
Okay. No, I think you got to pick one.
Really? God.
Both with Canario. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that's fine. Cole
Okay.
Mathis, Aliendo, and Canario. I don't think Canario carries much value at this point. So
No, because he's phased out of ABs. So that's what we've got now. The only hole that I see is Eggy Rosario is still probably the DH or Canario's the
Mhm.
DH. And I think
Yeah.
you just freed up $9 million in the Arias deal, and you freed up, oh boy, about $9 million in the Robert Suarez deal as well.
At
So
least. I mean, you're probably yeah, you maybe even a little bit more.
so you sign Elias Diaz, he's going to be a 1 year deal, two and a half, $3 million.
Might be a little bit more than that. I don't even know anymore with these
How ex
catchers.
how expensive is JD Martinez at this point?
Um, he can't be that expensive. He can't
Four?
be. Yeah, I think you could get JD for 5 or something like that. Yeah, clear up that money and sign Elias Diaz and JD Martinez. What other DH would there be?
I don't think there is one. Like it's either Canario, Eggy Rosario, or JD Martinez, and I know
Yeah,
which one is optically best for the Padres on opening day.
I like that. And then can we acquire Troy Johnston for cash considerations?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah, because he needs an opportunity. He's put up great numbers in the upper minors, can play first base, can play corner outfield, and gives you some more depth as well. And like, give that guy a shot somewhere else. Get Troy
Perfect.
Johnson for cash considerations.
And we're winning the Roki sweepstakes in IFA.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we can win the rookie sweepstakes.
So the new look Padres, we shed about $7 or $8 million here, is the catching situation: Camposano, Elias Diaz, Pablo Aliendo, Brett Sullivan. First base, Cronenworth would probably move there. Dylan Moore would be at second. Bogarts at short. Machado at third. The outfield would be a combination of Ornelas and Canario in left, Merrill in center, Tatis in right. The DH is JD Martinez. And the bench would be the other of Ornelas Canario, Elias Diaz. It would be Tyler Wade. And then it would be your guy, Troy Johnston, or somebody else.
Love it. Yeah. I
The
think it's the best way you
rotation.
can kind of piece this thing together.
Yeah. And the rotation would be Cease, King, Sasaki, Darvish, Waldron is the five, and Hancock is the six, with Randy Vasquez, Johnny Brito, Ryan Berger, Jackson Wolf as depth. And then the bullpen would be Jason Adam, Estrada, Morahone, Hoeing, Sean Reynolds, Yuki Matsui, Wandy Peralta, Juan Nunez.
I think with the way that Waldron looked in the second half and with the uncertainty of Randy Vasquez and we'll see what Johnny Brito is as well, but I think Hancock is very needed in this fold too. And
Yeah.
like you're telling me Hancock can't give you like a 4.7
Right.
in the five spot. That's what they're going to slug. Like you just need a guy that can go out there and not get destroyed.
Yeah.
And I think Hancock can at least be that. But he also has some more upside.
Yeah. I feel better about this Padres team, man,
I do too.
even
I
after
do
moving
too.
a rise.
Yeah. And it sucks. I feel bad for Arise. He's got to move around a ton, but I also love the fit in Seattle. And
Yeah.
it really they don't feel that. You moved one arm that was way behind, getting lapped by everybody, and then a utility piece that you definitely don't need nearly as much now.
Yep. All right. We're going to take one more quick break. Then the Giants. Giants have done a lot of our job for us at this point, and I'll walk you through the transactions to this point. But their final 2024 payroll, $201.9 million. They were 10th in Major League Baseball. Estimated in 2025 after shedding some money, 157.3. So they go down about $40 million. And based on everything I read, it doesn't feel like 201 is that crazy for them. They're trying to escalate a bit, and they would have no problem matching. It's not like they're in a cost cutting mode. Their deals to this point, Scoopsy McGee over here had a minor league deal for Max Stassi. They signed Willie Adames for 7 years, $182 million. Blake Snell declined his player option. Wilmer Flores exercised his $3.5 million player option, so he is still on the roster. They lost Michael Conforto, Mark Canna, and Kurt Casale to free agency, and they non-tender Ethan Small and Kaiwei Tang, the latter of which they brought back on a minor league deal. Adames was the big fit here. So as it looks right now, catching tandem of Pat Bailey and Tom Murphy. Then you've got Lamont Wade and Wilmer Flores at first. Tyler Fitzgerald looks like an everyday second baseman at this point with Adames at short, Chapman at third. The outfield is Elliot Ramos, Jung Hoo Lee, Mike Yastrzemski, and Grant McCrae as the fourth.
Mhm.
This offense is good, not great, and it looks better with Adames. Do you want to make it better? As weird as that sounds.
The offense
Yeah,
sounds like they do a little bit, right?
I think so.
They seem to be looking to upgrade first base because Jeff Passan put together a piece, right, where he was talking about all the bats that are potentially available on the market. And
Yeah.
I know Lamont Wade was named as one of them. And then now they're being tied to Pete Alonso. But it also just feels like the Giants, and as they continue to have been just trying to spend. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason. It just seems like they're just trying to spend, which I love and support. So do you think they're in on Pete Alonso because they're hell bent on upgrading at first base, or they're in on Pete Alonso because they want to just spend money?
I think they're in on Pete because they want to spend money, and I feel like there are better ways to spend money.
Yeah, I
And
really don't like the fit for them there.
no,
I don't
and
see
like
the point.
I don't really understand the Lamont Wade thing when you have a guy that is more kind of expired in this Giant situation. If I were moving one and I were Buster Posey, I'd move Mike Yastrzemski 10 times over before I move Lamont Wade.
Yeah, and I think he was listed in that too, if I'm not
Yeah, he was.
mistaken.
He was.
Yeah, so I think there's some subtleties that you can approach, I think, but I don't know if I'm like going all out to try to address it. Like if it works, it works. If not, I'm not gonna force it, and try to to force a deal to happen and overspend for a Pete Alonso. And I don't ultimately think it's just leverage, right? We talked about how the first base market has evaporated, absolutely evaporated because, every team has addressed it essentially that
Yeah.
really needed it. So for Pete Alonso, like his market's kind of thinned out. It's going to be harder to get the numbers that he wants. And the Mets are going to be able to just kind of say, hey, like this is what we're going to give you and see if you get something better. And I think those reports of the Giants being interested, I'm sure they called and did their due diligence. I think were very well timed and probably a last ditch effort for Boris to try to reclaim some leverage in the conversations with Pete Alonso. So ultimately, I don't think any team's going to want Pete Alonso more than the Mets
Yeah.
or value him more than the Mets.
I'm 100% with you. So, Alonso would be considered going all in because that's the biggest name left in terms of marquee bats that the Giants could sign. Step down, but I want to ask, is this still considered going all in? One of Santander or Profar? Because they could use a corner outfielder.
They could use a corner outfielder. The idea of putting Santander, a guy that's home run dependent in that ballpark, makes me a little
Yeah.
uncomfy. But I don't know. Maybe his spray charts are conducive still to success there. It's not like he was hitting in a very easy place to hit in either
Yeah.
last year as a switch hitter.
We
So
we
yeah,
also don't think it makes much sense for San Diego to bring back Profar, so San Francisco could be the landing spot for Profar.
well, yeah, I don't think it's going to be financially, like possible, I guess, for them to bring back Profar. And yeah, that could make a lot of sense. And that's a guy that like he's not a good defender really anywhere at this point, but he's good enough to like he has experience playing everywhere.
Yeah.
So he could go be mediocre at first base too for
Yeah.
you and platoon with Lamont Wade. And money ain't a thing. So they could easily be the high bidders there. I actually do like that fit a lot. And if you're Profar at this point, you probably gotten pretty accustomed to being on not even just the West Coast, like the western side of the country.
Right.
And I just wonder if that's where he'd prefer to stay. And it would make a lot of sense, I think, for everybody involved. And I'm looking at Santander right now and like how many home runs based on Baseball Savant that he would have had in San Francisco. And I mean, he still would have hit a fair amount there as well.
Would he have hit
Where
30? That's the magic
30,
number in San Fran.
30. He would have had 30 on the dot.
There you go. Okay.
So, I mean, if they want to throw money out, like and go big, I could see that. I think obviously how Elliot Ramos has earned himself all the ABs.
Yeah.
You then what do you if you add another outfielder, do you move off of Yastrzemski? Or honestly, he could be DHing for you too. Like Wilmer Flores to me is a DFA candidate.
Yeah.
I just think for now they're not going to do it until they absolutely need the spot.
Yeah.
But at this point, probably a DFA candidate. Are they suitors for Santander ultimately?
I think they could be, and I think Santander could play left or right, and Elliot Ramos takes over the corner. We also have yet to see Luis Matos fully find his footing in the big leagues. Do you think
Yeah.
he's going to factor in whatsoever in
I think
25?
he can, but I think if you're banking on that, you're setting yourself up for potential failure there.
Yeah.
Um,
We also have to factor in Bryce Eldridge is very close.
yeah, and he's gonna probably play first base.
First.
So I I think the Profar is a fun addition, and I think both are risky,
Yeah.
given the year that they had last year. But I think Santander is less risky in the respect that, like, even if he's not what he was last year, the Giants have been so like they've been searching for power for so long now, right?
Yeah.
And it's been so hard to find people that can hit home runs that are going to go out anywhere and that can hit the 30 there, right? They
Right.
haven't found anyone since Bonds. Um, I think they're probably the team that says, you know what, forget the risk. Like if it's $80 million, we were about to spend 300 like four different times over the last 4 years. We'll
Yeah.
give Santander $80 million. That's not going to kill us.
Okay. So we go with Santander. Santander fills a corner. I do think with Eldridge tracking to be there like at some point in 2025, that does make Yastrzemski excess, and Yastrzemski's in his last year. He's also very expensive. Yaz is estimated 9.25 this year, and that's expensive for what you're getting from Yaz. I think
Yeah.
they can pay it down a little bit to go
I don't even
get
know if
some.
they totally need to. Like
Maybe not.
it's expensive, but he's not bad. Like
No.
he's 106 WRC plus, 1.5 WAR last year, hit 18 home runs. Like he's fine. I think a team would just take it on. But do you necessarily need to move him? Like if Santander is DHing a little bit, playing some outfield, like I would want to be running. Santander is more valuable if you're running him through the DH at least a third of his games, I think,
Yeah.
instead of having him in the outfield every single day.
How much outfield did Lamont Wade play last year?
How much outfield did Lamont Wade play? He didn't play as many games in general. I think he had 401 plate appearances, but in terms of the breakdown, pulling it up right now, 94 games at first, 11 in right, 1 in left.
Okay. Like,
But
I view Wade as much more valuable than Yaz at this point.
I do like Wade's bat better, and he's cheaper. And you
I
got Jung Hoo Lee healthy, playing presumably very good center field. I think that's probably the route to go. Then if you're gonna trim,
if you're gonna
then
trim.
yeah, I guess trade Yastrzemski.
So Yaz, I keep going back to Pittsburgh with a guy like Mike Yastrzemski
Yeah,
because Pittsburgh is not ready to spend big on a corner outfielder. They're not ready to throw 15 to 20 million dollars a year at Tyler O'Neill or like he may be in that wheelhouse price range where he's owed 9
it's a good
and
1 year trial, see how things go, and yeah,
absolutely. And he wouldn't be, break the bank expensive on the free agent market after the 25 season. I think they also have a lot of relievers, and I think that there are going to be some guys that are pinched out. So it's like pick your reliever that San Fran wants in return for Mike Yastrzemski because San Francisco, they could benefit from getting out of $9 million. I looked at Carmen Mlodzinski. Like I think
yeah,
Mlodzinski could make a lot of sense for them, where he factors in after a Ryan Walker and after the Rogers and after Camilo Doval if Doval is still in the picture.
interesting. Yeah, I like that as a fit. I also was thinking of the Astros, like they could use an
Hmm.
outfielder. It's still not too much money to where I think that they would still be operating kind of where they need to operate.
Yeah,
So like that could be an interesting addition as well. And I think Yaz in that environment would I think be quite valuable for them. Like they don't need him to be much more than what he was. They just
yeah,
need we talk about just length and balance to that lineup. That would add that, and he's not incredibly expensive, and he's expiring, and they love expiring deals. So I could see him being a fit there as well. I just wonder what the Astros would be able to offer to make it worth the move, I
yeah,
guess, for the Giants. But I think just adding Yastrzemski to that fold, right? The only left-handed bat they have at this point is Yordan Alvarez, and then
yeah.
it's John Singleton on the bench. I think just having another lefty. Taylor Trammell is expected to take
Trammell.
ABs right now. I know you got the roster resource up too. Like, come on now. Um, I think they could find a way to make that work too.
Yeah, they would. I know they're trying to get out of Ryan Presley. I don't know what Ryan Presley's value is at this point, but Houston would be saving $5 million on this, 5 or 6 million, if it was a Presley for Yaz swap, and maybe San Fran throws in a lower level prospect.
That is actually a great idea because I think the Giants are in a position where they can, now you're getting a reliever for essentially for free,
Yeah,
and then you might be able to actually maximize that return a little bit more because of the financial swap. And I think for the Astros, like they just added their number one prospect. The farm system's not great, but they just added their number one prospect.
you're right.
I think they could be okay with maybe moving, a second tier prospect in there to kind of sweeten the deal and make it work.
So you think Yaz is worth more than Presley? I
I
was
think
thinking,
Presley is a net negative asset at his cost.
holy smokes. Okay.
Otherwise, he'd be in another jersey by now.
Whoa. All right. That would be, yeah. I was thinking San Francisco needed to throw somebody in for
I
Presley.
think I think if Ryan Presley was not a net negative, he'd be. I'd pick your jersey swap. He's already there.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do Yaz and a low level prospect. I mean, pick your poison at the complex. Or let's do
Uh,
Yaz for Presley and a low level prospect. Pick your poison at the complex.
exactly. Yeah, I'd say legitimately any flyer prospect from the Astros. There's probably not a system I know less about than the Houston Astros because of just how not exciting it is. But
Cool.
what do you think? They prefer an arm, the Giants, or a bat?
Oh, I don't know. Arm. Let's just
Yeah,
call
we'll
it an
just we'll
arm.
just call it a lower level prospect. Let's
Yeah.
just leave it at that.
Dartboard. So and it's nice because San Francisco effectively takes on Presley for $5 million.
Yeah,
or six.
and so and they're basically buying themselves a prospect and a reliever too. So I'll call it. I think you can get a decent prospect back. Maybe their minor league pitcher of the year, Ethan Pecco.
Oh, sure.
Why
Sounds
not?
awesome. He sounds great. What does he throw?
No idea.
There we go.
I
Yeah.
don't have anything on Ethan Pecco. I
Cool.
don't have anything. But yeah, I think that works.
Okay. So we just addressed the corner outfield with Santander. We got him another bullpen arm in Presley to go with Walker, Duvall, Taylor Rogers, Tyler Rogers, and then Sean Jelly, Randy Rodriguez, Eric Miller. I look at this rotation, and this is the one deficiency, the back end of that. Logan Webb is amazing. I think Logan Webb is one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. And then you've got Robbie Ray, who I know we're high on, but is coming off a Tommy John surgery. And what does high look like for Robbie Ray in 2025? Jordan Hicks is a guy that ran out of gas at about the All Star break and effectively moved to the bullpen. And then you've got Kyle Harrison, who we've expressed concerns about. He's kind of a one trick pony with a fastball. Hayden Birdsong, I really like that changeup, but how good is Birdsong actually going to be? The depth right now is Landon Roop, Mason Black, Carson Wisenhunt. I want to sign another guy, and this is where we could get weird. Option A could be Quintana on a 1 or 2 year deal. Option B, one of Justin Verlander or Max Scherzer.
Um,
Shut it down. Like, tell me why you want to shut it down right
they
now.
got to go somewhere, dude.
They
So,
have to. I know. And I'm like, you know what? You go to a very pitcher friendly ballpark.
hmm
You
oh man,
join
if I were
Logan
them,
Webb.
I would want to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have a chance to compete. Are they a World Series favorite? No, but you're not going to Washington. Like, and I think Washington's gonna be fun next year too. But
Yeah.
for my final year, I don't want to. I don't know if I want to play dad, for
Yeah.
a team essentially. Uh, who
You get to
who's a
play for
better fit?
Buster Posey and
Yeah, I would
Bob
say
Melvin.
who's got better. Who do you think has better ties to Buster Posey? But I also think Buster Posey could make a call to those guys and make a really good pitch.
I think so.
And I think Scherzer. Mm, who's a better fit? Who had more of a home run problem last year? Probably Verlander, right? It was Verlander.
Let's see. But Verlander, it was also just such a weird year, man. Let's see. Verlander last year, 90 in the third innings, 15 homers. Oh my gosh.
Let's get
um,
him, Justin. Let's get him,
yeah, let's go
Justin.
Verlander. I think Verlander would love being in a rotation with Logan Webb. I think
Yeah,
and playing for Bob Melvin and playing for Buster Posey, like at this point in his career, he's 41 years old. He's going to be 42 on opening day.
go to a place where you can still elevate that fastball and do it with a little bit more confidence
Yeah.
that the park can hold it.
Yeah, let's do that. That's so
Also,
fun.
working with one of the best receivers in baseball,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like I like it. I think it's a pretty good opportunity for the final year, presumably of what Verlander's. I know he said he wants to pitch till he's 45 or whatever. I wonder how much that changed after last year, but this is a great spot to try to bounce back. I like it.
I haven't even contemplated Verlander and Scherzer in the playing GM series this offseason before I got to
No,
San Francisco.
but somebody has to freaking sign him.
Somebody's going to sign him. I'm like, yeah, let's do this.
I
So,
like this fit. I actually do like the fit a lot.
okay. So the team as it stands right now, Pat Bailey, Tom Murphy are the catchers. Lamont Wade, Wilmer Flores are the first baseman. Tyler Fitzgerald, Brett Wisely are the second baseman. Then you've got Willie Adames at short, Chapman at third, Elliot Ramos in left, Jung Hoo Lee and Grant McCray in center. Right now, because we moved Yaz, is Anthony Santander, who will also cycle into the DH spot. Um, Yaz went to Houston for Ryan Presley and a prospect. So that bullpen is Ryan Walker, Ryan Presley, Camilo Doval, the Rogers twins is five, and then Eric Miller, Randy Rodriguez. And the rotation, Logan Webb, Justin Verlander, Robbie Ray, Jordan Hicks, Hayden Birdsong, Kyle Harrison is the six.
I was gonna float a potential Spencer Torkelson trade, but I don't
Do
know if
it
we need
for
to
the
do
sake of
that.
the exercise. Let's do
So
it.
I actually got a DM from John, gentleman who listens to the pod and always has some great ideas and thoughts, and he actually floated Spencer Torkelson for Camilo Doval, and I was like, you know what? That's kind of interesting. I think
I
that's kind of
dig it.
interesting, but I think with the way that it's situated now and with Eldridge on the way, probably don't need to do it.
Yeah.
But it is just an interesting move there too.
And he's from there. He's from Northern California. That could be, good low stress environment for him coming home. And, he could just handle the short side of the platoon at first base with Lamont Wade.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then he could be a short side of the platoon guy with Bryce Eldridge when he comes up and you shield him from lefties.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't hate it. Poor guy would be now getting sent from like one terrible hitter environment to another. But it's just another option. But it doesn't feel as essential with the moves that we made. I'd rather see what Camilo Duvall could do and bounce back in that bullpen because I think you need that bullpen to, have some upside to have everything come together this year.
Yeah. Only other counter is a lot like the counter you presented with Gleyber Torres, where like that relationship might just be fractured.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know. It definitely doesn't seem good.
Yeah. So
So
we'll see.
yeah, we'll see.
Oh, well. So we just tried fixing the Padres and made them cheaper, and the San Francisco Giants. We also talked about Burnes. That was so long ago. Burnes, Mervis, Vidal Brujan, Goat, Gleyber Torres, Teoscar Hernandez, and a little bit of Dalton rushing there, too. No show on New Year's Day. Enjoy your football. Enjoy your New Year's Eve. Boise State plus 11.
Ooh,
Thoughts?
okay. Okay.
I'm just like, is Genty going to get past the line of scrimmage? That's my take.
That's my concern as well. I think Georgia's going to absolutely boat race Notre Dame, which is why
Really?
that's why Notre Dame's going to win. If you're listening
So,
to this,
I,
use the MGM code,
yeah.
get your deposit match because I am so positive that Georgia's going to win. They're going to lose.
So, out of
That's I don't know
principle,
enough ball.
I don't think Georgia can win with a backup quarterback because a backup quarterback in the playoff is bad, but you think that they're just going to roll.
Oh, that starter was real good though, right?
I mean, that starter. Did you see Elitrosh perform? He went under
Oh,
the
he had
knife with
that.
Neil Elitrosh.
Carson Beck had the Elitrosh
They,
surgery.
they didn't
Did he get the
specify
hybrid?
whether it was the brace or TJ. They just said UCL reconstruction with Neil
Oh,
Elitrosh in LA.
if he got the hybrid of the
Oh,
brace and the UCL replacement, I am all in again.
I'm taking
But
him over Shador at that point.
but yeah, I'm excited. I am very, very excited. Hope everybody has a great New Year's. And
Yeah.
please be safe. Please be safe. Don't be on the roads too late. Uber, it's the
Yeah,
easiest thing in the world. I'm gonna grandstand on you right now. I know, but like I've it's the one thing I've brought up on this podcast a few times. It's so easy to Uber.
it is.
Definitely do it.
It's incredibly easy. Lyft sometimes cheaper, so you hit
Oh
it
yeah,
if
that
Lyft
too.
is in your area.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, rideshare, big.
Ride
Every link,
share.
yeah, every link you need is in the episode description, and we'll be back to do a couple more teams and talk about transactions on Friday.